Hello everyone, I'm Forrest McFreelava, and this is Let's Play Papal Italy. I believe we're on number 14 now. We left off at war with the North German Confederation. We have nearly entirely occupied them. They do have a few territories, and apparently Denmark is fighting at war with Poland, so that's interesting. We're basically going to turn off their war, however, as soon as we make peace, as our war aims coincide with the Polish war aims. We managed to get our Make Puppet Casus Belli against Bavaria, so we'll go ahead and just declare that right now. And let's take a look at the diplomatic situation. We are truced with basically everybody. The French will last a few more months, and there's really no one else around who we can go to war with. We do need to go to war with the Russians at some point. Let's take a look at what we could justify against them. Liberate country would actually be rather quick. We will go to war, a quick war, against the largest military other than our own in the world. And hopefully we will just also liberate Poland-Lithuania, and then bring our troops back around to fight the French and then later the British. Apparently we still have armies just doing nothing inside French territory. We'll bring them over to the North German border with Russia, and we won't make peace with the North Germans. We will first rush through Bavaria. We have 140 days to do that, based on our current timetables. What we'll do is we will march in, secure Bavaria, and this should be a rather quick process. We'll just have all of these armies move in and take over the areas around them. Hopefully they don't win any of these battles. I'm not sure if they have defense against gas attack. They do not have defense against gas attack. And apparently they weren't even dug in at all. So with that all said and done, we do have to defeat a large group of most likely, let's see, what would it be, mobilized peoples. So we are facing a few instances of rather stiff resistance. Ultimately though, nothing that will really slow us down too much. And it's really just adding casualties to their side, the fact that they even raised their population to rise up. However, that doesn't matter so much. We did manage to defeat them. These two armies are a bit sadly undermanned now. And in fact, we are taking pretty stiff losses just moving into their territory. So that is definitely unfortunate. We'll start rolling other troops around into the fight. We'll just make this into two groups of 33,000 men. So yeah, sadly the mobilized Bavarians are actually proving to be a bit, not a threat, but just a difficulty. We are, however, winning the battles, which is good news. Now, they did give a worryingly large amount of resistance. The kind of thing that makes me hesitate for our war against the Russians, which, quite frankly, we're not putting all that much effort into. So let's actually take a quick moment to build some new armies. We can build 30 new divisions in Africa, and 40 in Europe. So we'll go ahead and just build 4 groups in Europe. And let's see, 12 plus 28 would just bring it up to 40. Oh, and this is Africa. So let's do this first. We'll get this right up to 40, then we'll add it up to 52 to get the infantry we need. And then, let's see, up to 60 for... Oh, wait, no. Up to 56, because we're only building 4 groups. And then 64 with the Hussars. Or we'll just build 1 Hussar per group. And 1 armor per group as well. We'll start to integrate armor into our full regular armies. We'll get 6 armor for Africa. 3 hussars. Nine of those. 3 engineers. And apparently we don't have... Okay, we'll only get... Actually, no, we would still need 9 infantry. So let's hope we can find an Asian infantry. Somehow I messed that up. We'll just build a few additional infantry groups and hopefully use them to all fill that out. At any rate, that should be around 300,000 new men in our armies. We'll go ahead and just get them all in the field. Always interventionist. And let's see if we can't make a full army out of this group. Apparently we only have 1 engineer, and it is undermanned to start with. So that's terribly unfortunate. We really need more engineers in Africa. But that's a problem for a different time. We'll just set up 2 groups and then split that in half. So let's see, 8. There we go. And we'll split it and just move it near and around. Now that's actually a very interesting point that I completely neglected while setting up that African army, is that we have tons of armies all throughout Africa ready to go. So we'll send these up north to our northern borders. We're going to give a few of them rather circuitous routes just so that they don't all get where they're going at the same time, as that would basically just be an open invitation for the kind of attrition that would do great harm to these armies. So we'll just move them more or less randomly out, giving some rather long orders, and we'll just move forward from that. This battle is still going on. We'll just start retreating all of our undermanned groups so that they can hopefully go back and begin reinforcing. Hopefully they'll all be able to get back into combat readiness by the time our war with Russia is justified, and around then we'll be able to start justifying war against the French. We don't actually need or want anything from the French at this point. The only thing we would really go after is we could make them a puppet, though that's a bit absurd. Or not absurd, they are a great power, so that wouldn't work. Hence the absurdity. What we could do instead, I'm not actually sure, honestly. They might still have some colonies somewhere. We'll just declare war over their colonies and just use them to occupy to get access into the Great British area. The Great British are a bourgeois dictatorship right now. They might go fascist. We just unlocked fascism. We'll defeat these North German anarcho-liberals. And yes, that will be the gist of that. Hopefully we get some jingoism events, however we're not in a position to make peace with any of these countries just yet. So it doesn't really matter if we can or can't make peace with them anyway, or if we can or cannot add war goals, because we're not going to make peace yet. We will move these armies onto the border with the Russian Empire and get ready for what is probably going to be the longest slogging war we fight so far. Or it could be a complete walk in the park. I'm not sure exactly what phrase I was hoping for in that, but it might just be a walk in the park. We might just overwhelm them just out the door. Who knows? Constantly we'll go for more interventionism. Apparently that group did stack up, so we'll start bringing them over into the front. And we are starting to get just stacks of 60,000 men, which is less than ideal. Unfortunately the Bavarians, alright, I guess that was a group of not 55,000 men, or whatever it said, but a much smaller group instead. I'm okay with that. That is just a bit odd. And we'll just start getting all of our troops on the front. Now there's no reason for us to stay at war, so we'll go ahead and propose peace with Württemberg and Bavaria. And just like that, we have expanded our influence, not our sphere though, but our influence up into these regions. Now the North Germans might do something to get them out of our sphere at some point. I'm not sure how that will go about. but it remains to be seen. So that'll be something interesting. China is slightly larger. They are a great power now and communist. Let's take a look. Unfortunately, we can't see how much revanchism they have. However, they are definitely communist, and they are definitely ascendant. We'll see how that goes. We will not make peace with the North Germans, as that would ruin all of our plans. This large stack of troops we will march over into various areas it needs to go to, and where we need troops. It looks like the Hungarians are dealing with communist rebellion. I'm sure they'll deal with it fine. Poland-Lithuania is basically a monarchy. I wonder who is in charge of that. I would imagine probably one of our... Well, I mean, really, it couldn't even be one of the Pope's relatives. That would make no sense in several ways. I guess it might be like the Borgias. That group of popes, that like Papal family. Going off of that Netflix series, they might have succeeded in turning the Papal state into a monarchy. That would have been interesting. I mean, technically, as far as the game is concerned, we are a monarchy. We follow everything the way monarchies do. Oh well, at any rate, we can now go to war against the Russian Empire, and we have no truce with the French. So we'll justify war. We could take something from their sphere of influence, not that that really matters. We could cut them down to size. So let's do that. We'll cut the French down to size. And we will declare war to liberate Poland-Lithuania. It will cost 100% war score, so as soon as we're able to make peace, we will. Now our armies are going to march forward straight into the maw that is the Russian Empire. We will rush into Poland proper as quickly as we possibly can, sending forces just diving through. We will charge headlong into their armies, as they are pretty low morale and organization at this point. Now none of our tank groups are really there for this main press, so hopefully it won't be too much of a disaster. We are doing quite well against them thanks to general gas attack. And immediately, first days of combat, we are just wrecking Russian armies everywhere we're fighting them. We'll even be able to encircle a few of them and just completely destroy them just right out the gate. This Russian army is going to just face 100 and something thousand of our men. It looks as though they ceased to exist. And on the same day, we've won several of the battles. We'll move this army up to Brest-Litovsk, or Brest-Litovsk, whatever it's called. At any rate, doesn't matter too much. These groups, slightly undermanned, still good enough to go forward. Turns out we didn't actually send this army where we meant to. We'll send it there now. Oh wait, no, I had done that right. At any rate, I would draw up a war plan for this, but it's pretty simplistic. We're just going to march headlong into the Russian Empire until they're willing to quit. Immediately, 20,000, 60,000, 100,000 Russians gone in the first week of the war. Or maybe not the first week, about the first month perhaps. And Poland immediately falling to us. Now a smart strategy might have been to wait and, yeah, to just wait really. Not just charge headlong into the Russian Empire and let them send their massive army into us. We're going to hold another election, keeping conservatives in power until it ends. However, I am impatient. That's the main thing, and the further into Russian territory we go, the better our war score will be just right at the beginning, right off the onset. Right from the onset. There we go. That's the phrase to use. And at this point, their response is, in a word, limited. There don't appear to be very many Russian forces at all, which is very pleasant news. They do have 90,000 men, so we will keep our forces ready to go just in case that becomes an issue, which it very well may. So our forces will just keep marching forward, but not really engage the enemy if we can avoid it. That's going to be hard when we're just piling hundreds of miles into their countryside every moment, but we'll try to make do. These armies we will move forward to the French border. The French are probably going to be a bit of a problem now again. We do have our first tanks ready in Africa, so let's go ahead and just get an army ready to go. And let's see. We'll build it nearly like a normal army, but instead of a guard unit, and none of the African armies ever had guards, we'll just have an armor instead of the additional infantry. And we'll bring that up. We're winning occupations. It looks as though the Russian reserves are starting to come in. We will not allow them to give us too much trouble. Now, as we press further, that's really one of the two things. The Russians are going to get a massive amount of armies from mobilizing their population. They do have a rather large population. In fact, let's go ahead and take a look at it right now. Alright, the Russian Empire has 100 million people. We are second only to China, which, interestingly, that means we did just eclipse the British Empire. Go us. So that does mean that this could be a very legitimately threatening campaign. We might have to do quite a bit. Obviously, we have just won out loud so far, and we're probably just going to surround this one Russian army instead of actually fighting them. Hungary has declared war on Austria. That's interesting. I wonder what they're after. Hungarian conquest of Moravia. Interesting. I don't support that whatsoever. I think that will make the borders look weird. And if there's any worse sin, I can't think of it. Oh well, doesn't matter to us right now. Sorry, Germany, we're not going to give you your peace. And we'll go ahead and get the prestige gain. That'll give us socialist realism and other various artistic things. We may as well focus on the arts. Our armies begin to move forward, even still. We're going to just keep gunning it into the Russian Empire, start moving into the Ukrainian region. Ukraine is also a territory I would like to see free by the end of this. Oh well, it doesn't matter too much. And we'll just keep gunning it forward. The Russians seem tempted to launch an attack, however they are just not doing that yet. Here we see a Russian army did attack us. Unfortunately, we had that army on automatic rebel suppression, which means that it was moving away from the front at the time. So I don't believe we'll have any dig-in bonuses. We only have the general gas attack on our side. So that's not ideal. We are engaging the Russians. I didn't mean to do that. However, we're going to just pop in and reinforce them. This battle is going to be the major battle, at least of the early war, so we'll just rush all the troops we can into it and cut off the Russian retreat. Alright, with all these armies in their positions, that should be no trouble whatsoever. And we did win. They lost a solid 63,000 men to our 23,000 men, which is fairly decent as far as these battles are concerned. We also lost around 2,000 compared to their entire stack getting wiped just down there. They will escape to Vilnius. I didn't realize they could march to there. These undermanned groups will take over to the French border. They'll probably have healed up by the time they get there. It looks like that'll actually march them through Vilnius, so it looks like they'll have to do one last bit of combat in their tour. We'll also just march on this 45 stack. It is fully enforced and ready to fight, so we will probably take some severe losses. However, general gas attack hasn't led me poorly so far. Our Casus Belli generation speed is slowed down. That's kind of welcome. We took some initial casualties, however, there were over 10,000 Russian casualties a few days back, so it doesn't seem like it'll be that much of an issue. One of our armies is a bit undermanned now. We'll go ahead and send this army forward. This 17 stack will roll back to the French theater. We'll see. We can probably just build a new army, although we don't have any hussars. So we'll just leave that giant group of armor where it's at. Alright, these two groups will just move against this Russian army standing between them, and move all of our other forces around and generally forward. These armies will also go forth. Let's bring this 18 stack back home. The 24 stack's healthy enough to move forward. These two groups will bring against this Russian stack. And we'll bring this group as well. So the Russian armies, while massive, don't appear actually capable of slowing down our armies, mainly due to us having gas attack and them not having gas defense. We also do have gas defense, so if they did have gas attack, we would never even know. So throughout, our armies are doing very well. We have destroyed most of the Russian forces in our presence, and we're just rolling through deeper into their countryside. It looks as though this war will be over pretty quickly. They're offering a white peace, we're not going to accept that. We destroyed that army pretty much out loud. We'll roll up and seize these surrounding areas, and just roll through the Russian countryside. This army probably shouldn't have gone that way. It opens up a gap in the north of our lines. Ultimately not a problem though. And at any rate, we are meeting just amazing success throughout the theater. I'm not sure where the remaining Russian armies actually are. We'll take a look. They still have 600,000 men, give or take, in their armies. They might all be in their Chinese exclave. So that is a bit interesting. And hopefully the Chinese will take this opportunity to push them out. Who's to say, though? Now the Russians will accept peace where Poland gets all of their cores. I'm tempted to just accept that, as we wouldn't be able to add anything from them otherwise. Our war justification against the French isn't even done. So yeah, in about 100 days we managed to march through basically the entirety of Russian Europe and just kind of wreck their state. We haven't gotten to their capital yet, however they're already willing to accept a 100% peace deal. So that just goes to show how well we're doing. It looks as though one of their armies is fighting us. We will actually just make peace right now. And suddenly Poland-Lithuania is a legitimate thing in the world today. Now that's pretty nice. They'll probably end up being a great power or something of the sort in the near future. And this means that Denmark and all of their allies suddenly have a very different beast in their contest. A far different enemy to fight. It looks as though the French are having a big issue with rebellions. We're going to stage our armies just all along their frontier, and generally just be ready to fight. Now I'm not sure if these armies will actually get to the front in time. That remains to be seen. Ultimately we could just delay the actual declaration of war a few days until they all get in position. It's not as though that would really slow us down or matter very much in the long run. So we'll just load up the front. I'm not sure if we put troops everywhere or just most places. So we'll see as they arrive. The most important thing is that we justify a war against the British as soon as we're able to. So Poland-Lithuania is definitely one of the more sizable states in the world today. And they do have a few cores on the Prussian, or on the North Germans. So hopefully they'll get all of those. I can't imagine they wouldn't. Let's see what the Germans are after in their war against the Poles. They want to cut Poland-Lithuania down to size. That'll definitely slow them down a bit, probably not so very much though. This army group is apparently stuck. We'll just move them around. They probably tried to go over the Russian island and got blocked by the North German ships. I'm not sure if exiled boats can be blocked, but it does look like they were, so evidently seems to be the answer. Now our armies are going to take a bit of attrition as they move into position. In fact, let's get these guys out of there. It looks as though they're not actually going any place in particular. And we don't want to just take attrition for the sake of attrition. And yeah, With that all said and done, we can now go to war against the French. Apparently there is a crisis going on in Punjabi Baluchistan, which, alright, yeah, that'll just bring Punjab, which apparently is an independent and powerful state. We'll see what'll happen to them. Let's justify this war against the British. We will go after a place in the sun from them, as we do still need to get their colonies. And let's take a look at the diplomatic map mode. We have until 1915. We will be at peace with Egypt and the Ottomans. So once we go to war with the British, we'll just bully Romania, and then probably also not Hungary because they are in our sphere. Great Britain is backing Afghanistan, so we'll see how that crisis goes. And what is this? We cannot declare war while a crisis is happening. Well, it looks like we're going to have to just sit on the edge of our seat and watch this crisis unfold. Will Afghanistan acquire all of their cores from Punjab? Or will they just not? It is an interesting question, no doubt. We'll go ahead and open all of our factories and keep focusing on interventionism. Just build our factories up a little bit more. I wonder what's going to happen with the crisis. We will get an update in the end, no matter what. Fascists are now a slightly larger part of the upper house. I imagine there will be quite a few fascists throughout the world, just because of how hard all of these countries have been hit. At any rate, we can probably organize an army, so let's give that an attempt. North German's still offering peace. Alright, so we can get 2 hussars, or we were just doing 1 hussar for our European groups. An engineer, and the infantry. That brings us up to 33,000 men. But we have a glut of tanks, so that's alright. All of our old armies don't actually have tank corps, so that'll be a problem for them. In fact, we should probably just separate a big group of tanks and just bring them to the front. What am I doing? All the tanks will go onto one side. All of the non-tanks, except for about 5. Or 4. We'll leave 4 tanks. We'll take the rest of the tanks and just divide them more or less evenly throughout our armies. We'll just bring them up and divide them once we get them up. So we'll just split them like so, and that will be the most that we do there. It looks as though Poland is actually bringing significant forces to bear all of a sudden. Not too surprising considering they now have all of this additional territory to recruit from. The Russians are having a big old communist revolution by the looks of it. So who knows? Is their capital getting sieged? No, it is not. That is probably going to mean it's going to fail. They still have 107 brigades, so it's up in the air. We'll go ahead and hold another election. When our people's militancy gets above 5, we will start doing reforms. Sadly, the British are, well, we had a negative event for our casus belli on them. Now, we can't actually join either side of this crisis because we are at war with the North Germans, so hopefully we get some jingoism. Ideally, we'll get jingoism as soon as we go to war against Great Britain. I don't believe I've yet had a... what am I saying? I don't believe we've had an election with 2 jingoism events so far, so hopefully the first one won't be jingoism and the second one will be. Or who knows, in the ideal world, maybe they'll both have jingoism, and we'll just be really lucky. The Poles are making great strides. They do have a bit of Austrian reactionaries, which is quite an interesting thing for them to be dealing with. And the Hungarians are almost certainly going to get Moravia. So good for them, I guess. It'll just make this whole area look even just dumber. But I guess there's nothing terrible with that. The French are managing to defeat their rebels. Jacobins just throughout the countryside. Really, if this game has taught me anything, or if it's accurate in any way, then communists were always right to be worried about counter-revolutionaries, because it always seems like they have to deal with them. At any rate, let's balance these forces. We will send 2 off to the 60 stack. Hungary made a white peace with Austria. Alright, I mean, that's kind of disappointing for them. They really did win the war, but, I mean, it would have looked kind of gross. So, who are we really to complain? And we'll go ahead and just start balancing these armies out. We'll send this group to that 29 or that 27 stack, just because I have some sort of offense I take at 27 stacks, and we'll bring the other 2 to the 54 stack. And then they'll all be regular sized, which will be great, although it will also mean that I'll have no idea which one is which, and probably mess up and give too many tanks to other groups later on. Not that it's really that concerning, though. We do finally have engineers in Africa, so we can split them up and divide them amongst our armies. So we'll just take them all where they need to go, send this group of hussars up to the French front, and Africa really is paying dividends. I know that we had some very limited goals for taking over African areas way back when we started this campaign. Although it was definitely the goal to take as much as we possibly could, I did not see it going this far. And it's really nice that it has. It has been a good thing for our country and our people. Arguably. I mean, we have been in a state of near constant war, however, we have the greatest welfare state in the world. Everyone pays all of their money in taxes, which, you know, not really that much of a concern. They have all these social benefits, so it works well. The effective tax rate is only about 68%, so who can really even complain? Paying only 68% taxes? I mean, come on, guys. At any rate, we're really just waiting now for this crisis to unfold in one way or another. And it isn't really anything that we'll have to deal with. I'm sorry, what was that? Oh, okay, this is China. For whatever reason, I thought that was Russia, even though Russia is prominently displayed. We have our place in the sun cast bellying against the British, not that we can do anything with it. We are starting to fight off North German anarcho-liberals. The North Germans still a great power. And number 7 now, which means Russia is number 4, weirdly enough. They're still doing very well. Great Britain is number 3. USA is almost certainly number 2. And let's not focus on planned economies. So sadly, we're not really doing anything right now. We're just in a grotesque level of peace. Of terrible, terrible, debilitating peace. We'll justify a war against Romania to, let's see. What should we do to the Romanians? We can't even puppet them, weirdly enough. We could cut them down to size, though that doesn't really matter. Or humiliate them, though that also doesn't matter. Why can't we do anything else against the Romanians? That is a very odd thing. They're in the Russian sphere, but that's never stopped us from doing anything else. We could liberate a country from them, though who would we liberate? Let's take a look. We could give Hungary almost all of their provinces, but that would just be dumb. I'm actually a little stumped right now. We could go to war with the Belgians, maybe add Portugal to our sphere of influence. No, we can't even do that. Huh. How peculiar. And we can't declare war against the British. I mean, we could probably justify another war against them. I didn't realize we could do that multiple times. Acquire a state. Did they make any of their African territories into states? No, by the... Oh, wait, no, they did. We could do that. Or we could go to war against Romania for something else. We could just cut them down to size. I won't do that, though. I guess we'll just wait and be at peace, as weird as that is. And our people are upset enough that it kind of does justify us passing some reform. So we'll go and give them better safety. And now we kind of just have to wait. Who is going to join whose side? We will find out. Now this might actually turn into a great war, which would be interesting. In fact, it would become a world war, in fact. And we'll go ahead and get mass politics, getting ourselves the police state. And really, we need to become a police state. That's the next goal for our country. We could become fascist and just have that whole ideological nonsense rolling about. Although, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. We would lose the ability to hold constant elections if we allow the fascists to take over our country. And if there's anything I prefer to have, it's going to be the constant election spam, as that's going to let us declare more wars more quickly than anything else. And we'll just keep intervening immediately and wait for this crisis to go through. Our armies are doing fairly well. The election is over. No jingoism events just yet. We'll hold a new one. Our people are 5.19% jingoists. They need to get that up to a healthier level. Hopefully we will get more jingoists as we conquer lands from peoples that are very upset about being conquered. Weirdly enough, their jingoism and fascist tendencies will stick through into the new regimes, and they will actually support us more militantly than anyone else, than our own country people will. It's kind of interesting. You could call it like the Quisling effect, since we do have a good portion of France. That's not entirely irrelevant. And let's go ahead and try to get 6 groups. And let's see. This is a solid 2 armies. We'll go ahead and deselect them on accident. But there we go. 2 solid modern armies. These groups we should merge and then split. So we are getting tanks into our armies fairly consistently. We'll take a look at the production screen and see who all is making tanks and in what quantities. France is making more cars than us by a lot. That's very interesting, Communist France. Good work on your automobile production. Telephones, we produce the most. Radios, we produce the most. Aeroplanes, the United States produces the most. Tanks, though, we are the only producer in the world for tanks, and we're buying up stockpile. They are in high demand. And let's see, artillery, not in high demand, but who's producing the most? We are. Small arms, us again. Ammunition, us again. So we are making the most military goods. That's very important. It means that our army, which is quite a large portion of our state, should be able to maintain itself. We have just amazing production capabilities throughout our empire, even though we don't really have all of the best industrial lands. I am tempted to fight a quick war against the United States to just rove on in and just occupy them and wreck their industry. If their industry is occupied long enough, it'll close and then sell off level by level until it ceases to exist or just gets down to level 1. Now, if that sounds a bit absurd, well, it kind of is a bit ridiculous. Let's see how everybody is backing in this crisis. If we get one country on either side... Oh no! So, very sadly, we are facing a mass revolt. Let's go ahead and just get all of our forces ready to go. We're going to have to crush our own dissent with, really, the national hammer, which is just our massive military. So we can also take notice of where all of these communists are from. It looks as though our French people are particularly communist, our Ottoman territories very communist, and more likely than not we're going to find that Africa is just ridden with communists. That tends to happen in the colonies for whatever reason. Luckily we do have some armies more or less just around. We'll just start bringing them out of the territories they currently occupy. It looks as though we never bothered to get most of our armies out of Egypt. That was just kind of a lazy mistake on my part. Although, at this point, it's turning into a bit of a boon for us, as our armies all can just begin hunting these rebellions down. and more or less just turning them off. Now, it will probably, it'll be interesting. We have a population of 48.1 million. It has since dropped. And wow, we need to get these men onto these transports and then somewhere else, because wow, no wonder our African armies are lacking artillery. Sadly, some of our small stacks are just going to get stack wiped. That's really to be expected and is just an unfortunate element of having a revolution attempt. I did manage to throw in the word attempt. This won't be a revolution. We will not fall to communism. That is just not on the to-do list. Worst case, we would go and become fascists, and I know this is terrible and it goes against all of my values, we could become a democracy later on if we become fascists. And it's a very interesting thing, this game, how you do naturally just tend to find yourself rooting more for communism, or for fascism, than for really anything else other than absolute monarchy, or not absolute monarchies. That'd be ridiculous. Just some sort of constitutional monarchy. Really, that is just the best form of government in the world. Now, at any rate, the crisis is still just going. Nothing really occurring in it. No one is backing either side, so it looks like there's going to be a pretty severe prestige drop for all of the major powers who just don't align themselves either way. If we're really lucky, they will join one side or another. It looks as though, let's go ahead and get hunting. Great Britain is going to be the French's people to support. Japan will support Russia. And, I'm sorry, Russia and China will support Japan, and France looks to be about to support the British. So if this happens, that'll be a great war. We might see the AI empires basically just tear one another apart a little bit, which would be quite interesting. Sadly, the Polish are now a secondary power and one away from being a great power. We'll take a look at the score of China, who was 8th last I checked. 779, 655. We probably don't have to worry for so long. Our armies continue to use Germany as a staging ground. And it looks as though they are actually unsieging their lands. We'll just roll back and take care of that. We are dealing with quite a few troops there, just taking attrition for no reason. We'll roll them all forward to reinforce the line. And obviously we can't go to war against the French until the crisis fires, so we can't make peace with the Germans and have that make any sense until that same time. We'll go ahead and hold another election. Weirdly, no jingoism events. It's very peculiar. It would seem as though now that our people have been in a constant state of war for the last couple decades, they've kind of gotten sick of the thing. We don't even have our casus belli on the French anymore. That is just terribly inconvenient. On the bright side, our armies in Africa are more or less back in position. We'll get ready to just wreck through that. Our population has increased since the communist rebellion, and apparently we still have some communists just sort of doing their thing. We'll just roll on back to there and hopefully deal with them. We'll bring more of these forces down and around, and let's see how this is going. Nobody is supporting either side. How terribly boring. I think I accidentally intervened eventually instead of immediately, which means the deaths of quite a few people in that state, which is kind of terrible when you realize just how little thought I put into saving or not saving them, which is one of those kind of dark little moments that you have quite a bit of in this game. More protectionism, why not? We'll have to refabricate a claim against the French, as tedious as that is, and Great Britain has sadly become a democracy, those poor guys. It looks as though they have a liberal party, which is, thankfully for them, interventionist at least. Otherwise they would be in quite a bad spot. And it looks as though this is going to tick over in just a moment. We are also going to justify a place in the Sun War against the French. That'll take another 140 days, but that's just something we have to take care of. And we'll be able to go to war with the British basically the day this ticks over. So let's get a navy. Let's see how many troops we can transport with this one. 15 regiments. We'll also bring these tanks and whatnot over. And let's take a look at this war. British War of Afghani Liberation. Who all ended up on either side? Japan, Punjab, and Qinghai against the British Republic. Interesting war, I guess. We'll go ahead and just load this army up and take it in its current state over here. And we'll go ahead and declare war for a place in the sun. We will try to take from the British Ghana. So declare war, place in the sun. Let's go ahead and find it. British Ghana, 12 war score. Hopefully we'll be able to get them out of Africa in this war. Although with all of their states in the south, we're probably not going to be able to do that. These little bits, nubs of armies will align, just array them all together and bring them up to the rally point, which is getting a bit crowded. So let's go ahead and split this up. We do actually look to have quite a bit of things needed for armies, just generally troops and whatnot. So let's go ahead, this will be 33. We'll actually pull this tank out and bring it south. Let's see, can we build another army out of this group? We definitely can, probably a couple in fact. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll leave the undermanned one there for now and just make an undermanned army later. And there we go. So that's 2 additional armies all ready to go. We'll just march them south against the British because we can. They're an enemy to fight. We did manage to just roll onto this British army. They do not have, or they do have gas attacking defense. However, they're still not fully, what am I saying? They don't have full organization. They're about at 50%. So hopefully we'll be able to just roll on into their lands and just destroy their armies before anything really happens. There's a bit of a colonial setback. I remember that our casus belli against the French wasn't originally a colonial one. However, we did lose it, so we have to justify another anyway. And when we do declare war, I can't imagine they'll be very well off in fighting it, as we do have just a severe number of troops on their border, or just a massive, large number. We're going to not let the fascists make soup kitchens for our people because, yeah, no, why would we do that? We already have an amazing system of just subsidies and whatnot for our poor. It's not like we need that, or they need that, or anyone needs that. We'll go ahead and upgrade our naval bases, which will be good to have, although not really necessary. We did just destroy a British small fleet or task force or what have you. And hopefully we'll manage to kick them out of Africa pretty quickly. I don't really question it, as it does seem fairly straightforward. China is going to war against more of their sub-states. Let's actually take a look at their civilization level. And yes, it does look as though they just made states out of all of the colonial areas, and everywhere else is now civilized nations as well. All of whom the Chinese have cores on. So we're probably going to see the Chinese take back all of their lands and then retake this area from the Russians, which will probably set the Russians back pretty badly. At any rate, back to our war. We've won that battle against the British. Weirdly enough, they're still roving about. So that's all more or less going to be taken care of. They are occupying us, which is a mountain area that they're in. That's a bit tiresome. We'll roll these guys around. We do have an additional, what is it called? National focus. So we'll just bring that to making more soldiers, because that's really the only thing we're doing at this point is soldiers, soldiers, and more soldiers. It is interesting that we've managed to be conservatively led for the last several decades. That is an interesting feat all by itself. We did have a liberal party in charge for all of about 1 year. Just one short election cycle, which was interesting, although short-lived. And it looks as though we're going to have to reinforce this army because, sadly, the British are getting quite a bit of benefits from being in the mountains and all of that. This army we'll just bring back. It is now terribly undermanned, and that is just a problem we'll have to face. We'll send this army and a reinforcing group to the area. More interventionism, always with the interventionism. Sadly, we also brought the undermanned group. We might just make that not exist anymore, as it is not really too helpful. We did finally stack wipe those British. We will bring this army back so it can reinforce. We'll send this army to an area where an enemy group is coming from, and these men will all go up to the rally point and create a new army, because that is just clearly not a thing anymore. Let's see, we can get another group out of this force. It'll only have one hussar, but that's not really a terrible sin. Let's see, we'll actually cut out and no, we'll just leave it like this. That's probably good enough. We'll roll them on up, and it looks like we are actually going to take a French colony, as that will be our new war goal. Now that does set us back somewhat, however not all that much. And our complete lack of jingoism events is a bit concerning, though not really. We'll hopefully get one at some point, and if not, well, that's just more time that our enemies are going to have to be occupied for no real reason, and to no real end. It looks like that election is done. Let's get another election going. Now, I'm not sure if encouraging, what would it be? If encouraging fascists would actually encourage jingoism among our population. Too bad there isn't a national focus for that. In fact, let's double check that. Yeah, no, we can encourage party loyalty to various things. We can encourage them to produce different things. We can't encourage a flashpoint. We can attract immigrants, although that's kind of weird. And railroads you don't need to worry about, because railroads have been built everywhere in our empire, except for this province, and it's in progress. But that's new. Alright, all of the British African colonies are either occupied or in the process of being occupied. We'll just stay and focus on this area for a little bit. We got a colonial setback against the French, which is just kind of annoying. It looks as though there are a few sieges taking place over in Germany. We'll go wrap this group around and just take care of this area. In fact, where are they all coming from? Apparently we never sieged Mimel, or Mimel, however you want to call it. We are finishing the occupations in Africa. Poland-Lithuania was cut down to size, poor Poland-Lithuania, and we're now able to go to war against the French, which we will go ahead and do immediately. So let's see, war against the French, we'll go ahead and declare that, place in the sun. Looks like we're going after North Borneo, and we'll just march headlong into them. Let's take a look at our diplomatic situation. Pretty calm, we can justify a war, can't do anything we really want. Well, let's go ahead and, just for the sake of doing it, cut Romania down to size. Sorry, Romania, but yeah, you exist and you're close to us. Now, the French armies are actually pretty well enforced throughout their countryside, so this could be a bit of a disaster if we are to just roll in and attack them. So let's actually slow this game down a bit. How many regiments do the French have? Only 228, but I guess unlike the Russians, they're all in, well, they're all just at the front. Now, grotesquely, our armies are on automatic rebel suppression and are in fact just rolling forward into their deaths or away from the front, betraying their comrades. And I don't want either of those things to happen, so we're going to just roll through and make sure everyone's doing their jobs. And it looks as though we should be fine from here on out. This group, apparently some of these groups, that's really the one annoying thing about automatic rebel suppression, is there are no rebels for them to suppress, and yet they still want to ruin my front line. It looks as though the French took the opportunity to attack us. Come on, let's see the battle. We have a lot of dig-in bonus. However, it doesn't appear to be translating into a lack of casualties on our end. And in fact, this will probably be one of the bloodier wars we fight, as all of these French groups do appear to be, one, on the border, ready to cross over and attack us, which, yeah, that's kind of par for the course. You kind of have to expect that in a large war type of scenario. The French, however, while fighting us pretty heavily and with quite a lot of heart, they just don't have enough men. We're getting more protectionist events, which is a bit annoying. We don't really need to care about protectionism, as our ruling party has pretty much said that protectionism was the way to go for the last, several decades now. No matter. If we're lucky, we may even be able to bring enough troops to the French campaign that will be able to surround all of their full armies, and it'll essentially be like the Franco-Prussian War, where the French were just completely overwhelmed at the offset in one of the major battles. And admittedly, in the Franco-Prussian War, the war did kind of just drag on for a bit. That might happen to us with this. That remains to be seen. Our armies will just continue to move forward. In fact, we'll actually leave a few of them where they're at just to continue their occupations and to keep the French from doing what this group is doing right now. We get paramilitary groups, so fascists might become a bit of a threat. It looks as though our armies are actually facing some legitimate casualties, or some legitimately concerning casualties, I should say. So let's see about getting some reserves up from Africa. We'll bring these two groups up. These armies will start rolling on in. I'm not sure what that French army is doing. We might end up just attacking it inadvertently. French armies are rolling through and just attacking our armies wherever they get the opportunity. So it's basically chaotic. Our troops are just rolling deep into France, and French troops are fighting us just throughout. We'll surround that group, move this one forward. I guess we'll just let the French siege that one province of ours. We'll march this group against that small French army. Hopefully this isn't a terrible mistake. It doesn't appear to be. We stack wipe that French army. We'll take these armies and attack in the Swiss mountains. Actually, just saying that makes me realize how terrible of an idea that is. We'll just encircle their army. They all have automatic rebel suppression on. So let's turn that off so they'll actually stay where we told them to go and not ruin our war inadvertently. So this group was not actually stack wiped, although it did look like it, and the armies that it leaves behind are too wounded to really press the advantage. So we'll just leave everybody where they're at for now. Things are going fairly well for us. We are taking some losses. The French are also taking losses, so that's not too bad. We'll move this group up. Alright, so we are doing fairly well. Apparently I didn't just pause the game, which is a bit sad. Now, I imagine this will be a war with really, compared to our other wars, relatively even losses, which is going to be a bit sad. We did have a great thing going where we just won all of the wars out loud without taking any losses ourselves. Admittedly, we always should have expected that that wouldn't be a permanent state of affairs. These armies will hopefully be able to wrap around. Unfortunately, it looks as though the French are escaping, at least somewhat. We did manage to attack them, so hopefully they'll stay put. That basically cordons off those armies. We'll move that army group there. This army group will move forward. And let's see, these groups will just march into that French army, and we'll just press deeper into their countryside. From there, we'll be able to go against the British. Now, we're almost at an hour, so we might have to leave the British campaign for later. Also, are we fabricating a claim against anybody? I believe Romania, maybe? Yeah, 100 days till we get that done. Alright, at any rate, we keep moving our forces into the French territory. We did take a few losses in the very initial part of the war. That was, although to be expected, not really something I hoped for, obviously. No one hopes for that sort of thing. We'll move this army up. This army will keep where it's at. And we can get 10% more jingoism. Finally, yeah, that's great. So let's see. Do we actually have enough war scoring against the British to add a war goal against them? Looks as though we do. So let's go ahead. We are patriots, we will fight for our country and whatnot. Can we free people and free, say, Prussia in North German Württemberg? 85%, add war goal, free people, Prussia, North German Württemberg. We could do that, cool. Actually, let's see if we could free any other people. No. Well, whatever. So let's see, free people, Prussia, North German Württemberg. And alright, with that, they will get this tiny province, and we will be able to make peace with them. As for the British, we will add Togo as well. So let's see, where are we at right now? 13% they wouldn't accept. Or we could go down and get this Eastern Cape actual state. So acquire war goal. Let's not get place in the sun. Let's go acquire state. And what was it again? Eastern Cape. 16% war score, so it doesn't actually matter. We will in fact go after Togo, just because it will look better when it's done. So we'll require that from the British. Let's see what we can get from the French. Let's add a war goal. We can cut them down to size just because we can, or we could cut one of these random places from their sphere, or acquire a state. Not that we really want any of their states, but we could take one. We'll just cut them down to size. Alright, and just like that, we're going to call the episode right here, just because we have taken really everything, or we've done everything that we want to do, and it's been an hour. The final stages of the French War, in fact, let's just go through these battles, just so we'll be able to see the statistics on them. And I'll just add that, as I always do, to the speed play at the very end, as I do think that these war statistics are fairly interesting, and definitely worthwhile to see. So our armies move up and around. We're not totally done yet with our war on the French, but then are we ever really done with our wars on the French? Those armies will all roll up. These armies, we'll just leave them there for the moment. And yeah, this battle should be done pretty quickly, and we'll just call it there. We're going to take quite a bit of attrition just because those two armies stacked up, so we'll rove this one about. There goes another 150,000 Frenchmen, and our armies will just sort of be done at that point with the majority of what they've been tasked with. These groups will go rove into the French, and we are running a bit long, so we'll call it just afterwards. At any rate, we're probably going to get a pretty quick peace deal from the French. We don't actually want that though, as we want to rove into the United Kingdom in order to enforce our demands on them. Ultimately, we didn't lose very many men against the UK, they didn't really lose any men against us either, so that war is probably not going to be worth looking into. It looks as though Hungary was removed from our sphere by the Russians. We can probably just make them pay for that later on. We'll rove against the French and just kind of move throughout their area. And yeah, that should take care of most all of that. These groups will rove up and around. I know I don't really want very much from the French, however we do need to occupy them, otherwise they'll just be a threat. And they'll just rove armies against us every once in a while. It'll be just a big hassle. It's not really worth letting happen. And we may as well just send our forces to deal with that while this is occurring. Just while I have my mind on it, really. Otherwise we might forget, and then next session, French armies will just start roving into our lands and being a big old hassle. And it won't seem to be for any good reason. So these forces will all just move up, we'll fully occupy the French, and then we'll take this big group of armies. In fact, no we won't, because they're blocking in that French small stack. that we're just going to leave there. We'll take these groups and just start rushing over into the UK. Now, of course, we're not going to be here for that right now. We're going to just call this session, split these armies up so that they're all occupying different places. And there we go. Mainland France is pretty much going to be gone. Mainland North Germany, same story. In fact, they're actually offering us the peace deal that we want now. So there we go. Poland-Lithuania is now back and pretty powerful. They have all of their cores except for Krakow, and I don't quite imagine they're going to have Krakow stay independent for that very long. They are also going to be a great power, so they'll be out of our sphere of influence. That's kind of a bummer. And let's see. We won't get the ability to form the North or the South German Confederation out of all of these various South German areas, although only one is in our sphere technically. And we can't really get anywhere else just yet. Let's take a look at everyone's spheres of influence. We can influence Luxembourg, but no one else. So we'll just have to leave that where it is for now. And let's see, we do have a war justification getting prepared. So at any rate, we have managed to change the map of Europe somewhat. North Germany doesn't even show up on the map, so that's nice. Austria, all that. Yeah, anyway, we're going to stop right here. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Sorry for going a little bit long, but that's kind of typical at this point. Hopefully it's